Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get the webinar started. Today's webinar is called Unlocking Business Value with SharePoint and Microsoft 365, a strategic guide for decision makers. We are Spindustry and we've been in the business for 25 plus years. And along with our SharePoint services, we provide several other services. After today's webinar, you'll receive a link to the recording and the slides that you see. If you have any questions during today's amazing webinar, you can use the questions feature and we'll get to those at the end as long as we've got time. My contact information will be on the last slide of the slide deck, so if we don't get to your question, please don't hesitate to reach out. Besides today's amazing webinar, we do have lots of others that are free and easy to access. You can find those on spindustry.com/webinars. My name is Kelsey Culbertson and I'll be your host for today. And along with me, I have Tavon, who is our senior SharePoint developer, and Jared Etch, who's our director of SharePoint services. I'm going to pass it off to them so they can tell us what we'll talk about today.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Kelsey. I think the name that we chose for today's webinar, Unlocking Business Value, is a really important topic, and I'm really glad that you're all here to join us for this. We know that a lot of you want to make sure that your businesses run as efficiently as possible and that you're getting all the value out of the tools that you're paying for. And I think we've got a lot of good information for you today on some ways that you can get the most value out of SharePoint and the rest of the Microsoft suite to get the value out of your license. So to get to that end, today we're going to look at some real-world business use cases for SharePoint and how we use SharePoint across departments to make the entire organization more efficient and collaborate more effectively. We'll also take a look at how SharePoint solves some common operational challenges and reduces inefficiencies. Again, we know that it's important for everyone here to make sure your business runs as smooth as possible and you can keep costs as low as possible. And we think SharePoint and the rest of the Microsoft suite is a great tool to those ends. We'll also discuss the seamless integration with Microsoft 365 tools like Teams, Power Automate, Power BI, Stream, and how they all plug into SharePoint and really take SharePoint to all the beautiful things that we know it can be for you. We think SharePoint is at its best when it's viewed in the context of the full Microsoft suite. And then finally, we'll talk about what leaders like you need to know before launching or expanding SharePoint in your organization. We want to make sure that you're well prepared before you go down the road of rolling SharePoint out or leaning on it more heavily, so you can avoid any of those common pitfalls that might come up if you don't have a plan beforehand.
Awesome. Thank you, Tavon. So I think we first need to address why are we here today? Can we jump into kind of what business leaders are thinking about?
Sure, sure. So one of the reasons that we thought today's webinar would be so valuable is because we talk to a lot of different clients and we hear the same kind of concerns come to their minds. And we've seen the same thing with several different sources and research that we've done in preparing for today's webinar as well. There's really five major things that it's on the mind of a lot of business leaders out in the world that I think we can all relate to. And we want to make sure that we talk about those here today and how SharePoint can help solve some of these problems. The first concern on a lot of business leaders' minds right now is digital transformation. We'll talk a lot more in depth about digital transformation as we go, but I just want to highlight that, to us, digital transformation is about pushing you forward as a business. Even if you're doing well, even if you think that things are going pretty well, I think we can all benefit from a sort of digital transformation and taking that next step to use the latest and greatest technology and enhance the way that we work. We'll also talk about security. I know cybersecurity is front of mind for all of us these days with any of the threats that we hear about on the news. We'll take a look at how SharePoint can help us stay nice, safe, and secure as we go as well. We'll discuss data governance, how everything that we have is data and you want that data to work for you, but you also want the system and different tools that you use to help you stay safe and compliant with your data. And SharePoint in the Microsoft puzzle gives you a great solution for that called Purview that we'll take a look at in discussion as we go as well. We know talent acquisition and retaining the right talent is also important for any business. You want to make sure that you have the right people, but you also want to make sure those people are engaged and plugged in and feel like they belong. So we'll talk a little bit about how SharePoint can be valuable for that as well. And then last but by no means least, AI is on everyone's mind these days. It comes up in most conversations that we have. We know that the majority of business leaders and executives are thinking about AI as one of the top strategic concerns and the top priorities to understand and implement in their companies. So we wanted to make sure that we discuss that today as well.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of important to note that we went out and did the research and found a bunch of polls that were across senior leadership. And this is the information that they came up with. So there was probably 10. We just narrowed it down to five. But what I want to say about it is we also can vet this, right? Because we work with clients, tons of clients per year. And as we engage with them, these literally are those things that we see them most concerned about, or the things that are top of mind, with AI at the bottom of our list, but being at the top of pretty much everybody else's list, right? And so these are all really important. And even as we talk about that, as we were finding these, stats that are just sitting out there online, we came up with all this. Now, I'm not going to read all these stats to you because we'll give you the slide deck, like Kelsey said, and you guys can read all this for yourself. And as we go through and you see other slides that we have, you'll see stats on the side of those slides as well. That's really just to help you and to know that there are people out there just like you that are making these same decisions, and this is kind of where they're going. But what I do want to emphasize as we go through this whole webinar is that SharePoint is a valid piece of the puzzle, and you can see that almost everyone out there is using SharePoint. So that must say something to you as you go through and listen to things that we're saying. Also, Power Automate, super important. We're talking about saving hours in the day, saving hours in the year, right? Power Apps, being able to get a return on investment off of that. Power BI, being able to get insight from all the data that you've been collecting, and then even AI agents and such. All this is important, and all this is kind of what you're going to see in the conversations that we have as we're going through the next hour. And then also what you're going to see is, like I said, just the stats sitting on the side. Those are for you. We won't read those to you, but you guys can have those as you go back into conversations internally in your organization. So Tavon, why don't we start with digital transformation, right? I mean, it's what do we really mean by that, and what is it that they actually need?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we've all heard the term digital transformation, or maybe we've all said it, but what I find from a lot of different clients that I talk to is it means something slightly different to a lot of different people. But I think at the core of what we're talking about when we say digital transformation, one thing that we can all agree on is it's really a change, not just adopting one new technology. It's a change in the way that we work, right? It's a full transformation of the way that our business operates, what our processes look like, where we expect employees to spend their time in the day, how it is that we're going to deliver the best service to our clients, and how we're going to do the research that we do to keep improving ourselves. It's that fundamental shift in, oh, there's new technology out there, or oh, there are new methods and new ideas for the way that we can run our business that we want to lean into. That's digital transformation. It's not just saying, let's turn on a new tool. It's saying, okay, let's get ourselves up to date, up to speed with the where the world is going so we can be the futuristic business, not a business stuck in yesterday's terms.
Yeah, and so the definition you see here on the screen, which again you can read later, it was defined by Copilot. We just said, "Hey, Copilot, what's digital transformation? Can you give us a good explanation of that in the context that we're talking about?" And it did. There's nothing wrong with this explanation that it gave, right? But I'd like to relate that to real world, right? So there are multiple companies that we work with that I can think of that we've worked with in the past year. So let's say starting end of last year till now, right? That have needed to go through digital transformations. And the way they looked at themselves at the time was, and they literally said some of these things. They said, hey, you know what? We feel like we're in the Stone Age. We're looking at our partners, we're looking at our competition, and they're doing things that we're not doing. They're working in a way that we're not working. How do we catch up and get to the modern age, right? And so in some of those examples that we're talking about, they were maybe working in file shares still. And there's a lot of companies out there still working in file shares, right? And so what I have those file shares, but with SharePoint or going through a digital transformation, would that give me more capability, more modernization, more searchability, and things like that? That was what they were considering. What is it I can do if I move off of these network shares over into SharePoint? Or they have manual processes that they're going through. This person is spending hours just looking through an Excel document to find the right fields to look at, and then they grab their typewriter and type out an email and send them somebody some information. Is there a better way to work with that, right? Can we take those processes and automate those processes? That's really what these companies were talking about. And Tavon, just in those cases that I know that you and I are thinking about because we talked about earlier, tell me, like, what was the change? Like, how do they feel now as a year later from our engagement?
Yeah, I think those companies that you're talking about, the big thing that happened for them is now instead of feeling like they're stuck in the Stone Ages, they're excited about the new technology and they're kind of moving towards that business of tomorrow, where they really lean into automation. They lean into enabling AI to actually come in and help them and keep them ahead of competitors or give them insights into data they might not have known to actually look for, right? They're just staying as up to date as they can. And it's really already making some pretty big changes in the way that they work. And everyone there, I think, has felt that it's been more efficient, easier for them to work together, easier for them to collaborate and find what they're looking for, easier for them to just do their jobs. And that, I think, is the beauty of this digital transformation and embracing the new and making sure that we keep ourselves moving forward as a business.
Right. And I think the low level things to think about here is just like any other change you make, it's not an overnight thing, right? It is something that does take a while. And so I would say they're still in the process of their digital transformation, but well on their way within even a year's time, which is just that's significant, right? That's significant to say. And so some of you may be thinking, well, change is really hard. Maybe that's why you came here today. And I will just say, there are a lot of people in this webinar today. So, I mean, what this tells us when we see this high of an enrollment in our webinars, what that tells us is that this is information that you're struggling with or that you really need some clarity around. That's what we're gonna try to give that to you today. But in reality, if you're thinking, well, our company's not, we don't do well with change, right? Then at the end of this webinar, I have some information for you about how to learn more about how to make change and how to communicate that. So stick around. I'll show you that at the end of the webinar. So Kelsey, take us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of talked about digital transformation, but a question folks probably have is what can actually help with that digital transformation? I'm a little biased, so could we start with talking about how they can use SharePoint to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just rolling into SharePoint is one of the easiest kind of starting points in a way for a digital transformation for a company that's kind of using some of these older methods or hasn't experienced something like a SharePoint intranet in the past. So I just mentioned the word intranet, and I actually want to start there with why we think SharePoint is so helpful for organizations. The idea behind an intranet, which many of you are probably familiar with, but I don't want to assume everyone is, the idea behind an intranet to us is really it's about communication with the company, right? It's about giving our employees a place that they can go and say, oh, well, here's the latest news from the company. Here's the latest, I don't know, benefits forms from HR. Here's the latest news or happenings on different departments, or the latest about the company holiday party, or employee anniversaries, or birthdays, or other celebrations. It's that kind of hub for the business where people can come, start their day, see what's going on, read news put out by maybe the executive team, and we can start to expect that this is the place where all of our employees are going to actually start their day and find all the information they need. If we approach SharePoint like that and we leverage its power as an intranet, we can find ourselves really embracing kind of the one true source of information or the one stop we want our employees to go and start their day in. Even if it's just getting links to other systems they're going to need, having SharePoint kind of be the foundation and bringing that consistency along with all the benefits it has for collaboration and working together that we're going to see a bit later on, I think that's a really valuable thing for any business.
Yep. So we'll give a demo of this in just a little while, but I wanted to give you a real world scenario again, right? Because I'm trying to translate some of these things to what it really means for you. So we probably have a lot of people here today that are in manufacturing or ag or things like that, or in a role or a category of business where you create things, right? And based upon the amount of service you do or the amount of products you sell or whatever that may be, you have incentives to your employees where they get to see like a share of the profit, as a bonus for that year. And so there's a magnificent company that we work with. I won't say their name out loud, but they know who they are. And what they do on their intranet is they have those numbers that decide how much of a bonus you get. They have those sitting right there in their intranet, and they're updated every single day, multiple times a day, so that the people can see the progress that they're doing, and holistically as a company, everybody's working towards those goals. And that's a great use of an intranet to be able to show that there, because you're providing some things that employees really want out of a company, like transparency. Show me the information, keep me connected to what's going on in my company. That's what your intranet can be for you. And we'll, like I said, do a demo of that in just a little while. So Tavon, tell me more.
All right, perfect. So a few of the other things that I think make SharePoint really, really valuable for any company out there is just excuse me, how much it can help with kind of efficiency. So one of my favorite things about SharePoint, and one of the things that we hear a lot of companies we work with get good value out of, is this idea of co-authoring, the ability for us to actually work together in real time on the same file, even across departments. That's something that's a big shift, especially from older technologies or older file systems where, if we were on, say, network drives, for example, Tavon opened a document, Tavon went on a lunch break, and suddenly nobody else can get into that file, right? That was a problem that a lot of businesses faced. And that's something that SharePoint has done a fantastic job of kind of alleviating with its focus on co-authoring and collaboration. I think that's one of Microsoft's biggest visions for SharePoint, is it being that collaborative space and that kind of hub for the organization to work together. Along with that, while I'm talking about documents, another one of my favorite things from just moving into SharePoint, and this is completely without customizing it, is versioning, right? Just completely out of the box. Day one, you put a document into SharePoint, automatically it's tracking different versions of that file for you. And those are different versions of the file that you can go back and see, you can go back and restore, you can delete those old versions, everything you'd expect out of a version tracking system. The reason I think that's so significant is what we find that does for organizations we work with is it eliminates the need for people to save multiple copies of a document. I'm sure all of you out there with us have seen documents where we made a copy of it because I was going to make a change. So now I have the document one, made another copy, the document two, another copy, the document three. Well, with SharePoint, we don't have to do that to keep track of those different versions. We can just have them actually live on that same document and just through a simple right click, be able to actually go back and see or even restore that old version of the file. So powerful stuff right there out of the box for you.
I think that's significant. I also think that searchability of an environment is super important to everyone. I would like to be able to find the document I'm looking for when I'm looking for it, as long as I have permissions to be able to see it. I don't want to have to count on knowing the file structure to be able to find a document. I want to know that I found the actual true source of a document as well. So searchability is huge. SharePoint provides that. We're going to give you an example of that a little bit later. But to get to that level, we need some best practices like metadata or tagging documents and things like that. SharePoint provides for all of that as well. And I'll talk more about what that is later. But in addition to all of that, I want a secure environment. I have to know that my environment is going to be secure or I'm not putting anything on it, right? And there must be a reason that, so many of the Fortune 500 companies use SharePoint. It must be secure. I can't imagine that many businesses out there in the world using SharePoint and it not being secure. But that doesn't mean you don't need a best practice for it. You need common sense type of things, right? So it has the ability to be a super secure environment and help keep your employees secure as well. That's important. But there's other things. If we start storing documents over here in SharePoint, well, okay, how long do those documents have to live here? So a lot of you are in an industry where you have federal requirements on how long to keep a document. Maybe that's for manufacturing purposes, maybe it's finance purposes, maybe it's human resources purposes, whatever that may be. You may have terms that say, oh, this document needs to live here for 5 years, and if we were ever audited, we need to be able to prove this particular thing. But then also you may have legal requirements that say after that 5 years, that document needs to go right now. It needs to be deleted. What do? Have someone monitor the document every day? When we get to 5 years, someone says, oh, it's at 5 years. No, you need a system that will help you keep track of all that and then implement the rules that you have for your documents along the way. We're going to talk about that system in just a few minutes. It's called Microsoft Purview. But it works in conjunction with SharePoint to provide that retention mechanism. And then in addition to that, it's funny because when we normally do a webinar and we talk about sensitivity of documents, I usually reference the fact that it's like senior leadership that even needs that most, and you guys just happen to be here today, right? So here it is. All those documents that you're working on, a lot of those are intellectual property. A lot of those are just things that this is a corporate secret, for lack of a better word. This should not leave the organization. If it got out, it may be, weird for us to be able to explain. So how do you create an environment where not just permissioning, so saying, hey, I'm an executive, I can see the document, but the person over on the front line, they can't see this document. That's permissions, right? That's okay. SharePoint will handle that. That's security. But how do I say, I'm an executive, I have access to this document. What's to prevent me from accidentally attaching it to an email and sending it to the wrong person, right? I need a mechanism that helps keep me safe and keep my documents safe, the ones that are sensitive. And so SharePoint, along with the rest of Office 365, has the ability to do that as well. And since I'm talking about these other pieces of the picture, Tavon, can you help us understand what else is in helps us with this digital transformation that's already available to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we tend to find as we work with our clients is a lot of you out there don't know what you're really paying for with something like a Microsoft 365 subscription. By that, I mean there's a lot of extra tools in the Microsoft space that you just have access to with the same license that gave you access to SharePoint, but you might not know about them or be taking full advantage of them. So if you're ever in a Microsoft tool like SharePoint or like Teams and you see a little waffle icon somewhere, you can click on that and it'll show you the different apps that you have sitting in your kind of environment. I've just got a screenshot of that here on this slide. Yours will probably look something like this. But there's a few of these we really want to highlight today, right? We're going to take a look at Teams, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, and a few more that we think are really, really valuable. And again, these are tools that you're just paying for already that really can help an organization work more efficiently and run a smoother operation, really get the value out of your licenses.
So Tavon, let's start with Teams. Tell me about Teams.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so Teams is one of our favorite tools to work with when it comes to communication. We think Teams really provides the backbone for communicating and kind of collaborating to an extent in the Microsoft environment. If you're not familiar with Teams, you can also think of it kind of similar to other tools like Slack, right? It's kind of a chatting and meetings interface where we can actually have one-on-one conversations, we can have group chats, we can have actual groups that are established to help us stay organized with our conversations. And it just does a great job of allowing us to actually talk on top of the meetings we might all be familiar with.
And so, kind of to connect that to some real world scenarios. So, we've had people come to us who are on Zoom and say, hey, we're using Zoom just to do meetings, right? And we do like the Zoom platform, right? But can Teams do the same thing for us? So, for what they were doing inside of Zoom, Teams delivered the same thing. So, they were able to get rid of the investment in Zoom and then start using Microsoft Teams for that as well. But for an organization, what Teams really provides is a mechanism to be able to bring all the pieces that I want to work together on for my team and share them in one place. So I have to say this, and I need to make sure that it's clear. This is something that you need governance around. You need a plan for how to implement Teams, because a lot of companies have come to us and said, hey, either COVID happened, we all moved to Teams, or we just jumped in and we started using Teams because Microsoft said we should use Teams, and we started going down this road. But now it's chaos inside of here, and we don't really like that. So can you help us figure out what we really need to be able to do here? And our message to them is it should never be Teams alone. It is SharePoint and Teams together that really, really make it work the right way. And there are certain things that I want to be doing inside of the SharePoint piece of it, and then I want to be using Teams for the communication on top of that. So that's really, really important to understand, to make sure that you have a plan around Teams before you go forward. All right, so we've done a few webinars and things on Teams as well. So if you're interested in those, we'll just go over to our webinar site and you'll be able to see those. So Tavon, tell me about your favorite tool.
All right, my favorite tool from Microsoft is by far Power Automate. So, for anyone not familiar with Power Automate, it is just kind of the workflow engine behind the whole Microsoft suite. What that means is Power Automate, like the name kind of suggests, is the piece that lets us actually automate our business processes. We've got an example of one of those here on the slide for you. But the way to think about Power Automate is really there's something that is repetitive or some manual process that we shouldn't have to go through anymore. Is there a way for that to be automated to save us time, to save us effort, and free us up to do bigger, better things? The answer 9 times out of 10 is going to be yes. And Power Automate is a fantastic tool for you to use to actually automate some of those processes. We've used it for many, if not almost all of the clients that we work with to help automate part or even all of some of their processes to help them be as efficient as possible. And it's, again, something that you're just paying for. There is a higher tier, I will admit, of licensing for some of the more advanced automation scenarios. But for the most part, we have found that the free tier of Power Automate can do just about 80 or 90% of the things that businesses have approached us with wanting to automate.
Yeah. And I think it's important to talk about the return of investment on this particular one. You guys will see the numbers. Like I said, you can read those on your own. But saving your employees time per year or per day or per week or whatever calculation you want to do there, That's huge, right? But it's not just that. It is putting a process in place so that Sally, who does this particular process, if she goes on leave or PTO, the process can still go, right? Without her being there. Or if she wins the lottery and she's no longer with the organization, the process is embedded in the system that understands it and can continue to go along without them being there. That's huge to be able to save those processes. And so to kind of make it a little bit more real world for you, let me just talk about this example that's here. So let's just say that, without automation, my HR department, when a new employee was hired, they would enter information into their HRIS system. Here's Sally, boom, 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 boom. I typed it all in there. Everything's good. Then we probably needed to have someone go behind them and check to say, okay, is all this information correct before we actually publish it and get it all to where it needs to go. Then they would send an email over to IT to say, hey, we did hire a new person. Can you set up all their information? Get their cubicle set up or assigned, get their laptop sent to them, all the different things that go along with IT. And then they sent an email over to the manager and said, hey, manager, we did hire somebody. Don't forget to do all the things you're supposed to do as a manager, right? And then they sent out an email over to the employee saying that welcome aboard. Your first day is this. Here's all the information that goes along with this information, right? So that's a manual process. And commonly what we see is there's a person who's the expert at that, who knows all that information. But if they're gone, it's like, oh, did we do step 6? We forgot step 6. Did we do step 7? We might have forgot step 7, right? And then in this example, who's following up that IT did all their tasks? Who's following up that the manager did all their tasks? This whole process could actually be automated inside of SharePoint and Power Automate, where the HRIS system, not a Microsoft system, just want to state that, not a Microsoft system, right? Because Power Automate doesn't have to only work with Microsoft. So this HRIS system that I have out there, like Paycor or any of those other ones that are out there, they enter information inside of there. And then Power Automate sees that was entered there and says, okay, let me validate all the data that was entered in. Oh, looks like you're missing a phone number. Oh, looks like you're missing this. Oh, looks like that's not a valid piece of data, right? And it gives me all that information. It says, oh, their birth date is actually after their hire date. That's impossible, right? Things like that. Then it says, is the data correct? And if not, it sends an alert back over to HR, right? If it is correct, then it goes and starts doing other things. It sends out an email to the new employee. It sends a notification over to IT to say, hey, start your task. And then it assigns all the tasks for IT and then tracks all the tasks for IT. Then it notifies the new manager. And then it goes through and says, hey, these are the 5 tasks we need you to do. And then it tracks to see if those things are done. And once they're all complete, then it sends that information back over to HR saying, hey, this is done. And if it's not complete, if it's been too long, so, hey, task number 4 for the manager hasn't been done yet, and it sends out a note over to the HR team and they can go follow up on that. That's automation, right? That is being able to take those processes and put them into a system and have it take care of it for you. And then if Sally's not here, it's okay, right? The process will still work the same way. If my subject matter expert's not here, not a problem. The process is still going to work the way it's supposed to work. That is really good stuff. That's Power Automate. That's powerful as well. Tavon has another product that from Microsoft that he loves as well.
I sure do. And that one is called Power Apps. Very similar name to Power Automate because these are actually closely related tools. So just to back up just a step here, one thing to know about Power Automate and Power Apps is that they are intended to be very, very user-friendly and tools that let you as a business quickly start seeing that return on investment. So Power Apps is what we consider a low-code or no-code app builder. That's very, very valuable to just about any business. I'm sure all of you out there are paying for some sort of an app or wish that you had some sort of an app that could make a process better. For example, maybe we need a application that we can use out in the field to submit new inspection reports or submit incident reports so that it can be processed by the organization. Maybe we have a need for a customized CRM, not quite as big and detailed and expensive as something like a Salesforce, but just something that works for us as an organization. Maybe we have a need for a kind of form building tool or a survey building tool that's a little bit more customized than something like Microsoft Forms might be. Well, Power Apps allows us to do all of these things and more. And it's an application building platform that you don't need to be a developer to start using. Sure, if you are a professional developer, you can do bigger and more custom things with Power Apps. It does support kind of code development for anyone out there in the audience who's curious. But the real goal of Power Apps is that anyone in your organization should be able to pick it up, learn it, and actually start making business applications that are actually going to be really, really meaningful for you, and start pulling your processes together, excuse me, in a way that's really effective for you. So I think Power Apps is one of my favorite tools just because of all of that power that it brings to a citizen developer.
So we'll give a demo of that a little bit later. And I know you thought I was going to follow up with that and say something, but to be honest, I really want to talk about one of my favorite apps, which is Power BI, right? I love working with data. If you guys know anything about me, I'm a data freak, right? And so I love working with data. And this is where I find power inside of the environment overall. Like we've been collecting data since the day we opened our doors, right? And how often do we get to see that data and actually have it help us make decisions on where we go forward? Like oftentimes someone will tell me internally, oh, well, this particular thing didn't do that well. And I'm like, let me go look at the data, right? And I look at the data, I'm like, oh, the data says we did great on that. We should do that again, right? And so those are things that I want to be able to help make decisions with me, right? And so Power BI is a place for end user reporting so that you can connect to any data source. And I say any, knowing that there's probably one or two data sources out there I might not be able to get to, but in literally any data source out there, right? And then I once I connect to that data, I can fashion my own reports and consume this data now the way that I want to consume it. Right, and I'm going to give you an example of this as we go forward. So I'll save that for then, just for how it actually works. But it is absolutely amazing. And I think what this provides for us is that thing that we're looking for is the transparency of data. Give me the data, let it help me make decisions, and then I can see everything for myself, and I'm assured that we're going in the right direction, right? I have more informed decisions, and that's really cool stuff.
When I just started my Power BI, journey actually, just on Tuesday, and already even after a couple hours of training, I already love it. I can just see the potential for like ease of viewing data and ease of using it even. So it's really cool.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Okay, so Tavon, why don't we talk about Microsoft Purview?
All right, perfect. So earlier on, we kind of mentioned the idea of sensitivity and retention of your documents. Really, what we're going to be talking about when we say that in the Microsoft space is a tool called Microsoft Purview. And again, this is something that you're already paying for. You've already got access to it. Purview is all about keeping you and your data safe and compliant with whatever regulations or policies you're trying to follow. So, for example, Purview in its retention piece can say, hey, you're not allowed to delete that document until 7 years after it got created. Or, hey, you're actually going to automatically delete this document on its expiration date. Purview and its sensitivity component is that extra layer of protection on top of security, right? So I may have access to this document, but oh, it's filled with a lot of really sensitive information. I want an extra layer protecting me from accidentally sending that out somewhere I shouldn't, or making sure that if I download it, it's encrypted, or making sure it's got a watermark on it without me having to think about it. Sensitivity is a really, really valuable piece of what Purview brings to the table to help keep you safe as an organization. And like we said earlier, we think this is the right crowd to really focus on the fact that Purview is an extremely valuable tool for protecting you legally and keeping your property safe as an organization.
Awesome. All
Well,
right.
I'm going to jump in and talk about one of my favorite tools, which is Planner. As a project manager, Planner is absolutely fantastic. As you can kind of see here, you can put in different tasks for people. You can put details under those tasks. You can, organize your tasks as in this is my design team, this is my development team, and what they need to do. You can also set it up so you get notifications. So I can get a notification when a team member marks a task as complete. Team members will get notifications when I assign them a task. It's just really great for keeping organized and being able to kind of see everything all at once. And another tool that I love, since I'm just going to keep going, is Copilot, which we talk about Copilot all the time, obviously. But from a project
Yeah.
management standpoint, it is super nice because in meetings, Copilot can be there with me, and I use it a lot for its note taking abilities. So I used to have to, type my own notes out, but Copilot can keep my notes for me. So now I can actually be, fully engaged in the meeting, really keeping track of what's being talked about, and then Copilot can keep, those smaller notes for me so that I can go back later and see anything, that I need to help remembering.
And I'll just tag onto that because in that same process that Kelsey's talking about, our PMs are required to, after the meeting, write up a report of what the meeting was about, what the task, what our tasks are, what the client's tasks are, and then send that email over to the client, right? So they understand what we talked about in that meeting. And again, the problem they were having was they're in back-to-back meetings, so they'd have to wait until later, and then it's like how much memory do I have, right? Do I remember everything we really talked about there? I can't even read my notes, those types of things. Now it takes them less than 5 minutes to be able to do that complete task. They push a button, it writes out all the summary of that meeting, it writes out all the tasks from that meeting. They can just review that again with AI. They remain the expert. They use the AI as an intern. They remain the expert, and they look at it and say, yep, all of this is correct, and then they just send that over to the client. We could even automate that whole process so that after a meeting ends, the automation kicks in, does a summary of it, lists all the tasks individually, and then sends an email to everybody. You could do that, but we like that human touch inside of there so that we remain the expert inside of it. That is huge. Thank you, Kelsey, for bringing up that particular example. That's a great example of how to use that.
Yeah, and I'll also just highlight again, Copilot, it's one of our favorite tools because it's able to help us with so much, whether it's the meetings in the PM process or whether it's actually building something and writing code or even just talking through a problem. Copilot we've found is a really, really helpful tool. And what we're going to look at in a little bit here is, other ways to kind of think about AI and what you actually already have access to. Because just to spoil it a little bit, you might not know it, but Copilot is sitting there ready to help you.
Yeah, so Tavon, why don't we go ahead and just breach the topic of the AI?
All right, perfect. So, like I just kind of said a quick second ago there, every person here has access to AI, whether you know it or not. If you have access to the internet, you have a smartphone with an app store, you have any sort of a device that can get connected these days, you have access to AI. And by access to AI, I do mean a lot of different AI. I'm sure we've all gone to different websites out there and seen their AI, or we've all seen the news posts about some new AI service we never heard of and how it's in the news. But everybody here can be using AI, and everybody here, I think, should be using AI. Think about how nice it would be as a business if suddenly we had this kind of uh, automated assistant that can actually help us with, say, those meeting notes, or say, producing something, writing an email, or actually making a document. We all have AI and we should all be using it to make ourselves operate much more efficiently. But that being said, we also do think that it's worth considering a couple of points of caution before diving fully into AI as a business. We think it's one of those things that is going to be valuable, but we need to make sure we have a plan in place for. And we'll talk about why in a second here.
So let's talk about that more, Tavon, because I think this is important for everybody to understand, especially the crowd that we have. Normally, Tavon and I might, in an AI conversation, just go straight over this, but I think for you, I think this is kind of important today, right? So, as Tavon said, everybody does have access to it. So, what does that mean that they already have access to it? So, I'm Bob. I'm doing I have to produce a document for one of my clients, right? I'm like, oh, AI, I don't really know fully about this subject. So can you tell me more about it? The AI gives it an answer and it's like, oh, that looks good to me. I'm going to put that in this email and send it over to my client. Is that allowable in your organization? Should that be allowable in your organization? On the one hand, that was super helpful. And if it was correct information, man, he got his job done in a couple of seconds instead of several minutes or an hour, right? We know Bob, right? And then on the other hand, he got that information and didn't review it, and it was just like, well, the AI said it's right, so it must be right, and sent it out. Now your client has some information that is incorrect. We have to consider that, right? And so even if your company is already into AI, but you don't have policies around it, maybe we need to talk about that, or governance around it, maybe we need to talk about that. If your company has not entered into AI or told everyone what you feel about AI, maybe that's something we need to talk about, right? So it's a good thing. It's also could be a bad thing, and we kind of need to come to it right away. It's not something that I want you to consider on waiting on. I think this is something, if you haven't thought about, that you approach right away, because literally on the one side of it, it could cause issues, but on the other side of it, if you're not using AI, you are probably already behind. And sometimes for some people that means I'm behind my competition who is already integrating AI, or sometimes it means I'm just behind in my workforce, right? Because other businesses are using their workforce, having their workforce use AI to help them speed up their job. So you might be behind on the one side of it, right? But we want to make sure that we get ahead of it so that we can say, here's how we're going to actually work with it. And I think maybe the way we can break this down for you is, Tavon, first tell us the types of AI that are out there. I know it's not all of them, but just tell us the ones that are kind of mainstream.
Yeah, sure, perfect. So we're just gonna run through a list of kind of our top 5 AI tools that I think everybody can get some value out of. I'm gonna start with one that you've all probably heard of called ChatGPT. It's been in the news for years at this point with kind of revolutionizing the AI space and really kickstarting this whole AI push. And it kind of deserves that reputation, right? It is a very powerful, versatile tool that is excellent at kind of the conversational tasks that we all have come to associate with these types of AI. Going out and saying, "Hey, ChatGPT, explain this to me," or "Hey, let's try to start writing a email together," or "Hey, let's go ahead and do some brainstorming." All those really kind of chat-based interactions, I think, is where ChatGPT, kind of like the name suggests, really can shine. With that said, though, there are certainly specialized AI that we think are also going to be valuable for you to know about. One of those I'm going to kind of call out is Microsoft's Copilot, specifically the version of Copilot that's paid in the Microsoft 365 environment. Don't get me wrong, there is the free version of Copilot and it's powerful too, but the reason I want to highlight the premium version is because it lives there with you while you're working, right? That's the whole goal of the paid version of Copilot is it should be in my meeting with me, taking the notes. It should be in my Word document while I'm writing it, giving me rewrite suggestions or summarizing the file. It should be there with me when I click the button to create a new PowerPoint presentation, saying, "Hey, let me get those slides stood up for you. Just give me the outline," or "Let's work on the outline together." That is the power of paid Copilot, is it lives with you exactly where you're working in the Microsoft space and has access to all of the information about your organization that you want to share with it, so that it can do its best job of helping you and making sure that it gives you exactly what you're looking for where you're trying to work. Another one to highlight is Claude. Claude is a really good AI for those longer and deeper conversations or those longer, more complex problems that you want to solve. It is one of the best AI out there at the moment for actually letting you have a really, really long conversation or send it a really, really long prompt. It has some of the best support for higher amounts of characters and messages with it. And that allows it to actually do a great job of talking to you deeper, thinking deeper about problems, and being a really good problem solving tool. For those of you in the Google space, I will highlight Gemini, also known in the past as Bard. This is kind of Google's version of Copilot, if you will, right? You've got the kind of public-facing Google Gemini that anyone can access and talk to in the same way that Copilot has their web version. That's really just kind of the same goal as ChatGPT in both of those cases. But Google's Gemini also works similarly to Copilot when you're actually working in your Google workspaces, right? It's there with you while you're trying to work on documents in Google, especially if you have that kind of paid premium version. Same story as Copilot. And then the last one that I want to highlight for now is Perplexity. So Perplexity, the way to think of it is just kind of a super-powered AI search. So it is a really good research assistant to give you answers about your questions, cite sources, and make sure that it's actually doing a really good job of getting live information for you based on being really efficient about going out and searching the web for an answer to your question or what can help it answer your question.
So I think I would add just two things to what Tavon has said today. And I would say all of these are changing daily, right? So, you may like one today, but the others integrated the same thing into theirs tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. We're still in a race here, right? So that's not a problem. And then the other thing I would say is I was having a conversation with our marketing department, and they do digital marketing for companies around the country. And one of the things that they were observing, and I think the whole industry or the whole world is kind of observing now, is when I go to Google or Bing to do a search now, where I used to see a bunch of Google ads at the top, or Bing ads at the top. Now what I'm seeing is an AI response at the top. So if your company on their public website was thinking, oh yeah, those Google ads are kind of driving people over to my site, where they might have been doing that before, Now people are stopping at the AI because the AI is answering the question for them without having to go to your website to get that information, which means you need to start thinking about how do you do SEO or GEO now? How do you do those things more efficiently? And so, I believe we have a webinar coming up with that. I think if so, we'll send it out to you to let you know what that's going to be about. But that is information that's super important, right? That's just how the world is changing day to day with the AI. So for the interest of time, I'm just going to mention, because I already mentioned policies, I put this slide in here so that to say that you definitely need governance around your AI. You need that now, not later. So AI governance or an AI policy, you need to put that out so that your employees know what your current stance is on how to use AI. I put here just some topics that probably need to be inside of that policy, and you guys can go from there or just look it up online and see. So Tavon, in the interest of time, let's just quickly go through this and then we'll jump into some demos.
Okay, perfect. So we'll go through this one kind of quickly, like you said, but we wanted to highlight a few of the things that AI can do for us and ways you can think of AI. So what you're all probably familiar with at this point and what we've talked about mostly so far is content generation. Going to the AI and talking to it to have it actually make something for us. Maybe it's some text like a outline, maybe it's a email that it writes or fills in a Word document for us. But it's that actually generating something new that we think a lot of people kind of think of AI as. However, there's a couple of other ways we want to make sure that you guys kind of start thinking about AI as well. One of those is kind of just as a virtual assistant. So what we
Yeah,
find is sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say, I think that's important, and you'll hear us talk about that all the time. Treat it as an intern. If you use that methodology, it actually really works. It makes sense, right? So you would not give an intern a task, have them go do that task, and when they brought it back to you, just post it somewhere. You would not do that. You would tell them what to do, have a conversation with them. They would do whatever you ask them to do. You might have to have another conversation with them to say, hey, could you correct this and could you do that? They'll go do that. They'll bring it back, and then you'll go through and read through all again before to make sure it's all 100% right. Then you'll post it. Just treat the AI like that, right? Treat it as an assistant to do things for you. But also, what we're seeing is a new way of thinking in leadership, right? In leadership, what we're seeing now is automate as many processes as possible and make some of those processes intelligent automation as well, involve agents inside of the processes that are going on. And what we've been seeing is people are looking at trying to get some margin of 70 to 80% of the processes that can be automated, get those actually automated. And that's huge, right? That's a different way of thinking. And so just to let you know, we did do some additional we've done tons of webinars on Copilot AI. And so 2 of them are listed here. We'll put the links in here in this document for you as well before we send that out to you. So you'll have the links to those as well. They're free webinars. All right, so fantastic. Let's jump into some demos to see kind of how we can tie all this together. Right, and just to remind you, these are some of the things that are on the business leaders' minds: that digital transformation, cybersecurity, governance, talent, our talent and what our skill sets are out there, and then also AI. So here's my scenario for you. I've got 2 companies, TMI and Spin Manufacturing. They're still using network drives. They had lots of manual and repetitive processes. They were unable to find documents when they need to find those documents. They were having problems with that. They also have duplicate data everywhere, so they needed to solve that. So 2 people show up at a meeting with the same document, but they're actually different documents. And then employees would like more visibility and communication from senior leadership and also from departments like IT or HR or finance. The decision makers would like to see more insights into their data so they can make decisions faster. The IT department would like to lower its technical debt, like all the technology that they have out there. They want to kind of reel a little bit of that in and get rid of some of that stuff they're paying for on a yearly basis or annual or a monthly basis. And then departments are requesting to use AI in their daily operations as well. How can we start integrating some of that into what we're doing? So I'm going to jump out of here and go to a couple of sites that I have. And so if you haven't seen SharePoint before, great. This is a new experience for you. You can start to see what it can do. And if you have, then just kind of bear with us as we go through. So the first thing let's talk about is we mentioned intranets being able to help you, right? So this is an intranet. So how is this company, TMI, how are they using it to solve problems? Well, one, they just have it's a one-stop shop or a first-stop shop as well. So when they come in here, a new employee even could find all the departments that are listed inside of here, know how to go get information from those departments. Could also find out information about our multiple locations that we have and get information about those locations, including things like, hey, they're closed today, that kind of thing, right? Or who to contact over there. Also, we're a client-centric organization, so we set up client sites inside of here so that each of our clients has a centralized site, and we're able to go in and see all the things we've offered to that client so far, or see some of their information that's relevant to that specific client when I need to know it. We also use it, like I said, as a first-stop shop, so you can come here to actually find other applications that might not even be SharePoint applications. Maybe there's another employee portal that we have. Maybe it's a video training application that we have that's not SharePoint. Just links to get to all of those things. So I don't have to now remember all those links. They're right here inside of SharePoint. We also have helpful links, just things that we found were helpful for people to get to, like our payroll application or site, and then even things like, just general videos that we have or our blog and so forth, just helpful internal links to be able to get to. We also develop multiple searches. So a generic search where you can search for anything, but also a search specifically for policies to be able to search for. So we did all that, but then we also used the home pages to our advantage as well. We're showing news and events inside of here. And this news is not just from the corporate perspective, it's also from other sites, like maybe HR has added a news item and it bubbles up to here as well, which is kind of cool. We have things over here that are important to us. So there's a 39-day countdown to the Connect, Care, and Change event that we sponsor. And so, hey, you can get signed up for that today. We also are using other tools that are in Office 365, like Microsoft Forms, and also like Stream for videos, and also like Viva Engage for like being social. And we have Viva Engage over here on the side where we show people's promotions or new hires and things like that. And people are able to come in and like it and love it and even comment on it. And it just gives us that more social together experience inside of our organization. I have videos on here, so I have some recent training videos. I have videos that might come from like senior leadership and things like that, and they're just embedded here. That's using a tool called Stream, which you're already paying for inside of your environment. It allows you to have like your own internal YouTube. That's kind of cool. But let me go over to one of my departments, because one of the things, the ask were, we want more transparency or more information out of HR. I want to be able to find that information easier. And so here on my HR site, they're able to control this site and show what they think is important or what they're asked for most. So they have the employee handbook on here. They've got a link to the training site. They've got a link to the new hire center. They've got a link to the benefits and health and benefits, and the benefits enrollment. They also needed a place for just them, just so that HR can work just by themselves. So they have this private site for HR, and only HR can get to it because they talk about important things like FMLA. But you also see that they have some reports embedded right here on their homepage, their own, and again, only they can see it. Here's a Power BI report that is embedded right here inside their environment. They can come in and take a look at it, and they can, it's a live report, so they can go in and manipulate the data and see exactly what they need to see, help them make decisions easier, right? That's really kind of cool stuff to be able to have there. But they also have libraries that they work out of. So they were on file shares. They moved off the file shares and moved their documents over here into SharePoint. And when they did that, like Tavon said, they now have versioning inside of here, which is really cool. But they also have the ability to tag information now. And so each of these documents needs to be tagged with the person who is the case manager for it. And so they're able to do that very easily. And when they do that, it just gives them advanced techniques inside of here. Like they can now group this by the case manager and kind of look at it like it's folders and see how many cases each of the person's kind of what their workload is right now, things like that. But they have other columns behind here as well that help them out. But this now can actually be turned into a workflow. So we could say that once a case is assigned, once we assign someone to it, that it kicks off a workflow behind the scenes and sends out all the notifications that need to go out. That's pretty cool stuff, right, to be able to do. I also have inside of here a policy center, because we struggled with having all of our policies just in a folder that somebody had to go look at. And how do we communicate that with people? Like when a new policy comes out, how do we automatically notify that everybody a new policy that pertains to your job type is here that you need to go look at? So we took it and we built an entire site out of policies. We have policies in here. We have standard operating procedures in here. We have guidelines inside of here. We have how-to documents inside of here, all that good stuff. We've got cool documents inside of here with cool naming schemes, which I know you guys love naming schemes. but I also have like some of that tagging going on, that metadata inside of here. So I've got policy level, I've got what department owns it, I've got the content type that it is, so that letting SharePoint know that we consider this an actual policy. Tavon talked about versioning, so I see version numbers over here for it as well. In the background, I have another column for this that says, what date should this be reviewed? So once a year we want it reviewed. What is that review date? And what will happen is a workflow will come through and say, oh, it's 30 days before the review date. Let's notify this department here of the fact that it's about to expire. They need to come out here and review it. That's pretty cool stuff to be able to do. But all this metadata and such that we added in here also makes our environment much more searchable. And so in my search center, if I came over to it, like I said, I have a search specifically for policies and I have one that's just generic. And so inside of here, I could just search for stuff. I'll just search for the word policy, right? And in my environment, there are tons of documents that mention policy, but aren't actual policies. And you can see I have 419 documents out there that mention policy that aren't really policies. And so we turned the search into more of an Amazon style search. And so inside of here, I could go and like when you click Prime, it gets rid of all the things that are not Prime. And so inside of here, I could say, oh no, I was looking actually for a standard operating procedure. So they select standard operating procedure, and it narrowed down that 419 down to 2 actual policies in there. That is pretty cool stuff to be able to do, right? To enhance all those things. But let me look at my other company that I have here as well. Okay, they solve some problems. Their homepage is a lot simpler. They just have, just here's some ways to get to different things like the safety report that we have, or the SOPs that we have, or go to the policy center, or get to our benefits. They just made it a little bit more simple for theirs. But they also have departments. So I'm going to take you to our facilities and plants department. And so on here, you can come to this site and learn all the information about our different facilities that we have, find out all the information about it, who to contact, all those good things. But also here's all the plants that we have as well, who's in charge, the whole hierarchy that's there, what they do, maintenance schedules, all those good things can be there. But one thing that we needed for our company, and actually all of you need as well if you have any offices, is you might need to know, like, when is something wrong at the office? Like, when is there I found broken glass somewhere? I found, a door or window that's left open that won't shut. The air conditioner is not working. Those types of things. So facilities maintenance is what we're talking about, right? And SharePoint can handle that. So this client had a facilities maintenance application that they were using, and it wasn't doing all the things they were doing, and it cost them a lot per month. We removed that from what they have, and we put that all into SharePoint. And so we built an entire site around inspections. And sometimes an inspection is planned, and sometimes it's just an arbitrary thing that someone's reporting back to us. And so we needed to track things like, who do we contact for what type of item is going on? So if it's Windows, contact Tava and so forth. We needed to have a list of our facilities, so we have that here as well. We needed to be able to track all the photos that come in and all the reports that come in. And so we also need to be able to assign tasks when it was like an urgent type of thing. So we built this whole thing of a bunch of lists, but I don't want my users to come and see this. I want to make it really easy for my users to be able to report something going wrong in the facility. So Tavon built for them a facilities inspection application. Tavon, while I just go and point and click in here and do some things, why don't you just talk about what this application really does?
Yeah, perfect. So this is one of those power apps that we were talking about where, again, we were just able to very quickly put together an interface for the facilities inspection reports. So here we're just clicking into actually add a new, or submit rather, a new inspection report. And this one is specifically for the HQ location. On that last screen, you might have saw we had multiple locations. So this will walk you through filling in the report. It'll actually generate the title for you, calculate the inspection date, and then based on some of these other fields, it actually has some workflows that are going to run for us as well. So what we're going to find happens once we submit this inspection report is it's actually going to kick off several workflows that first go ahead and create this item over in SharePoint, log all the data for us, make sure the attachments are processed correctly, make sure that people get notified if they need to be notified because it was a unplanned inspection where something went wrong. But it's also actually going to trigger another workflow for us that has an AI actually go ahead and take a look at the ticket description and some of the other fields to decide, is this an emergency task that we need to get somebody a assignment so they go out into the field immediately to fix this? So here's what that looks like. This is just a Power Automate workflow that, again, it just says, hey, an inspection report was submitted. AI, go ahead and analyze that for us. And if we found that it's negative and it was a high risk kind of issue, we're going to go ahead and get the contact for that facility based on which facility the report came from and which items they were an issue with. And then we're going to go ahead and assign them a task, and that will notify them as well. So pretty powerful stuff, even in a relatively small workflow here, already taking care of a lot of the manual part of that inspections process.
So that is awesome, right? And that is we solved problems with an environment in a very easy and straightforward way as well. So that's pretty cool. We hope you enjoyed that demo. So I just again, you guys have these stats, but I just want to restate. We use SharePoint, we use Power Automate, we use Power Apps, we use Power BI, and we used the AI inside of there as well, Copilot AI, and even Copilot agents in these scenarios to be able to increase our output, to be able to make things people's lives easier in our environment, to be able to give us transparency of data, or at least allow me to get to the data that I need to see at the right time to be able to do different things. Just this is incredible to be able to do, and it's something that probably every one of you is thinking about and needs to be able to do inside of your environment. But Tavon, how do they get started? What is the first step to making all this happen?
Really good question. I think anytime that somebody talks to us, they're going to hear us say the same first step, right? It all starts with governance. For anyone not familiar, when I'm talking about governance, I just mean the plan and the rules for how we're going to use SharePoint, how we're going to use Teams, Power Automate, all the different Microsoft technology, or really any piece of tech that you want to roll out as an organization. You need to make sure that you have the plan for how we are going to use it, how it's going to grow with us, what we're going to do with it in place, as well as the rules for what's acceptable to us as an organization. And we want to make sure we think about that before we roll anything out, right?
Yep.
What we found is if we don't start with governance, we have to go backwards and get governance in place for it to really be a success.
Yep. And that's governance about SharePoint, governance about AI. And I think you can really think about it just the way you think about any other mission critical system. You don't just put it out there. You have to have conversations about it first to figure out how it's supposed to work for you, and then you move forward. My recommendation is that you include a expert from every portion of the company when you have those conversations, because implementation of SharePoint affects everyone in the organization, not just parts of the organization. It shouldn't be an IT job to go do this. Maybe they can spearhead it, but it shouldn't be an IT job. It should be a company-wide job. Get everybody's opinions so that you build it right the first time. That's what you're looking for out of a governance exercise. So I mentioned that some of you may have people who are just not willing to change, or in the past you've seen that change is hard. So we have a webinar coming up on Tuesday, August 26th, 11 a.m. Central Time. Go ahead and register for that, because in that we're going to bring in one of our partners who specializes in how to communicate change to an organization, and we're going to have a beautiful conversation in there about that. The link is inside of here for you to be able to sign up, but definitely join us if that's a problem that you're having internally. We are very successful as we communicate with different organizations on implementing SharePoint and all these other pieces and communicating that change to employees. But what you're going to learn inside of here is other techniques on how to do that as well. So really, really good webinar coming up. Feel free to join us for that. So I'll go ahead and, in interest of time, and skip the summary. But for Kinsey or Kelsey, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Wow, right? Kinsey will be happy to know that I did that on film. But yeah, Kelsey, go ahead and just wrap it up for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, everyone. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. We have 2 questions that we'll answer, but just in case anyone needs to go, remember that my information is there, my email address. So if you have any questions that we couldn't get to today, please don't hesitate to reach out. We will also send along the slides and the recording to everyone as well. So if you have to go, we understand. Thank you so much for joining us. But we did have 2 questions that we wanted to answer here before we go.
Sure.
Okay, so for a first question, someone said, after they have SharePoint and Teams set up, which M365 tool would you recommend I add next for my digital transformation?
So I'll answer that, and Tavon, you can answer too if you want to. But I would say once you have best practices and governance around SharePoint and how it's being used, and Microsoft Teams and how it's being used, there's a couple different avenues to go. So where Tavon might say it's time to start looking for processes or quick wins on how you can automate some things, find those processes and make them work. So start small, implement a few things, see how that's working, and then grow bigger and start finding other things to automate. Tamon might answer that because that's his specialty. I might answer it as you need to start looking for retention within the first year and sensitivity within the first year of implementing your SharePoint environment and getting some of that wrapped up as well. Those are just two things that I feel benefit any organization, and get that in place early rather than later, especially sensitivity.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think retention and sensitivity are definitely important, but like you said, I also would encourage you to very early into having, first adopted SharePoint, start thinking about what can we automate, how can we make our lives a little bit easier, and kind of take care of some of those tasks that we know we shouldn't have to spend time on at the same time as working on that retention piece.
Awesome.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and then we'll hit one more question before we have to go. Someone said they loved the search page on the example SharePoint site. They said they have issues using the main search bar in SharePoint, so they would love an idea. They love the idea of being able to refine a search. They wondered if there was any guidance from us on how to set that up.
Yeah, so very interesting, right? I think our, as a company, as we engage our clients, we put this into everybody's environment to the point where we kind of forget that it's not actually out of the box, right? But it is free, right? So to be able to set up your search in this way is a free thing. So what you're talking about is this top bar up here. When it does a search, it doesn't really the it does find everything, right? So our search is not doing anything different than what this is doing. It does find everything. So I look for policy here, it's going to go out, but the experience that the user's getting is different, right? So this doesn't even tell you how many items were found. And in any good search engine, the search engine is going to say, oh yeah, I found 450 items or 10,000 items, right? I kind of want to know, do I need to put another keyword in here or something, right? So that's kind of the way Bing and Google and all those things work. So we actually hijack this bar, and when they actually put a search in there, I didn't do it in this environment, but we do it normally. When they do a search, it comes over to our custom search page, which my search results page looks like the rest of my site. It doesn't look different, so I keep the user's context still the same. But the tools that we put in here, and you can go look these up there for free. It's PNP search web parts. The PNP, P as in the letter P, N as in letter N, and P, PNP search web parts. And what that does for you is allows you to put that into your environment. And then once you do, you get these other web parts. So you get this search bar, so they can enter information in, red car. And then you get this search results here. So it displays the results, right? And then you get the refiners, which I think are the best portion of this, which I can go in and say, oh yeah, I'm looking for a specific thing, or those tags that I put in earlier, I can utilize those tags to narrow down content as well. And I think it's significant to be able to do that inside your environment. And so, yes, we definitely think that you should be able to do that. It also helps with people search as well. And so let me see which one I have installed here. Yep. So I can go look for people. So let's go look for Tavon. And you'll see that it'll bring back Tavon on his many accounts that we have. And when I just hover over him, it has all the information. And so the same PNP search results web parts do all of this for you. And I think that's a must-have for every SharePoint environment. And like I said, it's free. So like when we install it for our clients, we don't charge them for the actual web part. We just put it in there, right? Because we know that it's beneficial. Great question.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's probably all the time we have questions for today, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if we didn't get your questions answered, if you think of any others. And we appreciate you guys so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.